Here are 5 cognitive biases and their impact on donor behavior. Bias number 1 is called the anchoring bias. Anchoring bias is when someone relies very strongly on the first piece of information they hear, and additional information affects them way less than the first piece. How fundraisers tend to use this correctly is when having a conversation about a gift or something that they're funding, they will throw out the number or the range as a place to start. Not to say, oh yeah, we're, gifts of any size. Of like, right now we're really looking for gifts. Even if you're not asking the donor, say you're just having a conversation. Right now we're really looking for gifts in the $50,000 to $100,000 range. There's some naming opportunities associated with those so that we can fund blank and blank, which is $500,000. So as I'm having the conversation, I haven't even asked for the money yet. I'm just talking about the project in generalities, but the first number I'm going to throw out is the number that donor is going to keep in their head. And then everything bigger than that is going to seem really big. Everything smaller than that is going to seem really small. So using that anchoring bias to throw that number out first. And the obvious strategy application for this is to always aim big on that first number so that even if that's not the number you ask for, or even that's not the number that you initially get to, you're framing the conversation around something that's bigger and higher impact to get the donor thinking in that space before you even start. Bias number 2 is the bandwagon effect. This is the tendency for people to do something primarily just because other people are doing it. The way this impacts donor behavior is if someone sees a recognition list or a giving list or a donor list, especially if there are people who they know on that list, they are way more likely to contribute, or they look at a campaign that's much closer to goal. There's actually a really interesting data point on this that Blackbaud did a few years ago. They had 2 identical campaigns, one that was 20% to goal and the other that was 80% to goal. And they presented both case for supports, and almost everyone wanted to give to the 80%. Not because they needed the money more, the 20% had way more need. They were a lot further away from their mark to actually be successful. But people wanted to give to the 80% because they wanted to be on the winning team. They're like, if I give, I can see this is about to happen. Others are supporting it. It must be pretty important. Look at all the people who are excited about this. This is the team that I want to be. I understand that this charity needs this more, this project needs it more, but this is more likely to get funded. So as you have momentum, as you have people give, as you get gifts, we want to publicize that. That's the strategy from the bandwagon effect. As you have success, you want to wave the big flag and say, look at all the stuff that we're doing. Look at all the people who are giving to this. Look how far we've come. It's why most campaigns don't even launch publicly until they're 30, sometimes even 50% to goal or more, because they want to harness the bandwagon effect. Cognitive bias number 3, confirmation. Confirmation bias. This is the idea that people tend to believe things more if they pre-confirm an existing belief. They're much more likely to believe something if it's in line with what they already believe, whether it's true or not. We see this put into effect with political posting on social media. If you are leaning far left or far right, you are much more likely to be served information from that side of the political spectrum because you're likely to engage with it and be like, yeah, that is true. The other side is wrong. This is just harnessing confirmation bias and using it to keep you on that platform. So we can actually use this in maybe a more ethical way in fundraising. Donors are much more likely to support causes that already align within their existing beliefs or values system. So the way that we can kind of employ this as a strategy is we have to know a little bit about those donors' value or that donor's values, and then use that as a way to frame our ask. Now, obviously that requires a lot of information. It requires kind of a two-way street. It's why it's so important to go and, when you're speaking with a donor, ask lots of questions, get to know them. We make the mistake all the time of wanting to just pitch our project or pitch our charity. We're so wonderful, you should give to us. Whereas in a discovery meeting, or as you're kind of looking at what donors you might want to put in this category or that category, you're having that initial sit down with a couple or a person or a business, is that we want to try to share information, but we want to also get as much information as possible. What kind of causes do they support? The last time they made a gift, what kind of impact did they hope that gift had? What are some of the gifts that they've been most excited about? What are some of the projects they've supported that they felt have been most successful? We can just literally ask them these things, and by getting that information, we can build a little bit of information around what their values are, and then we look at our project and see how those values might align with what we're trying to do, and then when we come back with the ask, we can either do this in real time and do it that day, or we can present them with a more formal ask at a different later meeting, as long as we take good notes and kind of understand that, and hopefully that resonates with them more, because we're presenting something that is directly aligned with their value system. It comes from asking questions, but we're using that confirmation bias to figure out exactly what and how we're going to ask for that gift. Hey, thanks for checking out our video. If you're getting value out of this but would like something more personalized, you can book 30 minutes with one of our experts to see if you qualify for our support services. Link below in the description. All right, cognitive bias number 4 is the halo effect. This I do feel like I'm gonna draw. I'm gonna try it. Okay. The halo effect, when simplified, means that one piece of information about a person or a charity automatically applies to all of that charity. So I think one thing, whether positive or negative, about one aspect of your program, your charity, or your reputation, and that automatically translates to everything else that you do. So this is kind of the, whatever my brand is, whatever people think about me, whether it's true or not, is very much pervasive. So it kind of speaks to having that really strong brand equity and reputation in the community. Several ways we can actually harness this and do it correctly. Number 1, and the easiest thing, is just to share the wonderful work that you do through either impact stories, impact data, or when you get a donation and you spend it on something, and that something results in good work for your mission, you just gotta tell people about it. If you have helped 30 animals or 30 kids, or if you've helped one animal or one kid, you can make a story about that, but being able to publish good results is so key to moving this forward. We often work to get the donation, and then we kind of don't really interface with the donor after that because we're busy doing the work, or we're the fundraising team, and that's the frontline team, and they do the work, and we just make sure they stay funded. But if we can then maybe partner with the front-facing part of our organization, the mission-facing piece, the staff, the volunteers, there are so many wonderful stories that we can capture and harness and then share to the community, so that hopefully by the time we reach a donor, they've already heard a couple of wonderful impact stories, or they've heard a reason as to why they might give. A good example of this, of someone who has very large brand equity, would be St. Jude. It's like, we're taking care of very sick kids. I know if I'm gonna sit down and be asked for money for someone from St. Jude, I kind of have a vibe of what they do and why. I don't have to be convinced that their mission is an important one. You can have that same sort of aura and understanding even within your local nonprofit by being able to share the impact stories of what you're doing and use the halo effect to have that one good thing that you did apply to the next project. So when you have the next thing that you're funding, or hey, we did this thing and it was great, and now we're gonna expand into this area over here, the donor automatically assumes it's gonna go well because they saw you do a great job with the first one. So it really is just all about reputation, but we can really harness the halo effect to help us out in that way. The 5th and final cognitive bias that we can use to our advantage is called loss aversion. Loss aversion is simply that people prefer to avoid losses more than they like getting gains. The same gain feels like less value than the thing lost. An example of this would be if I had $20, I am more protective of losing $10 than I am of gaining $10. Minus 10 is a bigger deal than gaining 10. So I'd say, hey, you have an opportunity to gain $10. That's gonna seem less attractive than, hey, you have an opportunity to avoid losing $10. That feels worse. It's the same $10 one way or the other, but losing $10 feels like a bigger loss than gaining $10 is a gain. How we can use this in our fundraising messaging is just the way that we frame our case for support. So we can frame the outcomes that won't happen if we are not successful in raising this money. For example, if you were a food bank, to say, if we don't meet our goal this year, 20,000 people will be hungry by Christmas. That feels more urgent and has a little bit more impact, a little more scare to it than help us feed 20,000 people this Christmas. Same thing, same impact, same money. But when I say that there are 20,000 people who are gonna go hungry if we don't do this, you're like, oh, okay, how do we help? How much do you need? Is it food, is it money? So we can use this kind of natural cognitive bias to make sure that we're messaging our case for support correctly in order to convince people to hopefully feel some urgency in supporting our cause and do good in the world. Now that you have a better understanding about cognitive biases and how they apply to fundraising, see if you can implement or even just recognize them in your everyday work. Hey, thanks for checking out our video. If you're ready to level up your fundraising program, Pride Philanthropy might be able to help. Our team helps raise over $100 million per year for dozens of clients all over the country. We train staff and volunteers, conduct feasibility studies, and manage multi-year campaigns. If you're looking for outside help to kickstart your program or rejuvenate your efforts, you can book a free 30-minute call with one of our experts to see if you qualify as a client of Pride. Visit pridephilanthropy.com or click the link below, and we'll see you over there.